What does family really mean? For 5 years after my marriage, I couldn't understand my father-in-law. To be honest, I was afraid of him. I couldn't figure out why he was so cold, why he was so strict with his son. But then came that winter day in 2019 when my husband collapsed. That's when I discovered a truth that had been hidden for 27 years. My father-in-law wasn't my husband's biological father. They shared no blood. But when I learned what he had sacrificed for my husband, I fell to my knees and wept. That day, I learned there's a love deeper than blood. This is my story. A confession from a daughter-in-law named Jisoo Park. In the spring of 2014, I married Minho Kang. My husband was caring and responsible. But there was one problem. His father, Tae-ho Kim, a silent man of 68. From our first meeting, he never made me feel comfortable. Actually, he treated his own son Minho the same way. Always cold, expressionless, never showing emotion. On our wedding day, I expected to see him cry. Many fathers shed tears at their children's weddings, don't they? But he just sat in the corner of the venue, his face unchanged. His congratulations were brief, just 2 words, live well. Then he turned and left. On our wedding night, my husband drank and cried. He said his father didn't love him. It had always been that way. Never a hug. Never a word of praise. No matter what he did, it was never enough. I held my husband and comforted him. But deep down, I resented my father-in-law. Why was he so cold to his son? What could be the reason? After marriage, we didn't live with my father-in-law. My husband didn't want to. His father lived alone in an old two-story house, and we visited once or twice a month. Every visit felt heavy. He'd ask how work was going. When Minho said it was fine, he'd snap back, asking what was fine about it, questioning why he was still just an associate when his peers had already made manager. Minho would apologize, and his father would tell him to work harder. That was the extent of their conversations. My father-in-law only ever pointed out what Minho lacked. My husband grew more distant, and I became increasingly uncomfortable around him. In 2017, on New Year's Day, they had a big fight. Minho went to share news of a promotion, but his father asked if that was all he'd achieved. My husband stood up in anger and shouted, asking what would ever satisfy him, whether they'd live like this forever. His father said, nothing. You just went outside to smoke. After that day, my husband didn't visit his father for over a year. I didn't stop him. I even took his side. I couldn't understand my father-in-law either. December 4th, 2019. Wednesday. The day my life completely changed. That morning, my husband left for work as usual. He'd been working late on a project. He looked tired, but I didn't think much of it. Around 2 p.m., I got a call from his office. It was his supervisor. Minho had collapsed during a meeting. An ambulance was taking him to the university hospital. My mind blank. My hands shook so badly, I could barely hold the phone. I took a taxi to the hospital. When I arrived at the emergency room, my husband was already inside, and all I could do was wait. About an hour later, the emergency room door opened, and someone walked in. It was my father-in-law. I was shocked. I hadn't contacted him. How did he know to come? I later learned that Minho's company had his father's number listed as an emergency contact. My father-in-law said nothing to me. He just sat in a chair by the emergency room and stayed still. He looked calm on the surface, but I noticed his hands trembling slightly. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged. The patient was in critical condition. Acute kidney failure. Kidney function had dropped dramatically. They'd started dialysis, but he might need a transplant long term. Kidney transplant. Those words made my legs weak. The doctor said they were moving him to intensive care. Visits would be allowed starting tomorrow morning. That night, I tried to sleep on a lobby chair. Tried, but couldn't. I just cried thinking about my husband. Around 4 a.m., coming back from the restroom, I saw someone in a corner of the hallway. My father-in-law. He was leaning against the wall. In his hands was an old handkerchief, and he was using it to wipe his eyes. He was crying. This man, who never showed emotion, was alone in a corner, shedding tears. I couldn't approach him. Something told me I shouldn't intrude on his grief. I just watched from a distance. It was strange. Why was this cold man, this man who seemed so indifferent to his son, crying like that? Next morning, I met with the doctor. Nina's kidney function had little chance of recovery. We could continue dialysis while putting him on the transplant waiting list, or if a family member could donate, we could consider a faster transplant. Blood type compatibility and tissue matching would significantly improve survival rates. It would be best to start testing close family members first. After the consultation, my father-in-law was standing in the hallway. He asked what the doctor said. I told him a kidney transplant was needed, that they wanted to test family members. My father-in-law was silent for a moment, then spoke firmly. He would be tested first. I asked if he was sure, given his age. He cut me off. He would go first. That afternoon, my father-in-law was tested. So was I. Results would come in a week. A week passed. Mino had been moved from intensive care to a regular room, but he still needed dialysis and wasn't doing well. On December 11th, the doctor called me aside. The test results were in. I asked if my father-in-law was a match. The doctor hesitated, then spoke carefully. My blood type wasn't compatible with Minho's. I already knew that. The problem was Mr. Kim's results. I asked about my father-in-law's results. His blood type was O, which matched, but the tissue compatibility was completely off. And there was more. The doctor paused. My heart began racing. He said carefully that the genetic testing showed they weren't biologically related. The world seemed to stop. I asked him to repeat that. Mr. Taeho Kim and Minho Kang were not biologically father and son. The DNA didn't match. I collapsed into a chair. My mind went blank. Not biologically related? Then Minho was. My father-in-law was. The doctor said in these cases, it's usually adoption or another circumstance. Did I know about this? No, I said. I had no idea. The doctor said nothing more. I stumbled out of the consultation room. At the end of the hallway, my father-in-law sat waiting. I walked toward him. My legs trembled, but I walked. I called to him. My father-in-law looked up. His eyes were already filled with tears. I asked if he knew what the hospital had told me. He nodded. I confirmed it. Minho wasn't his biological son. My father-in-law didn't answer. He just lowered his head. Tears burst from my eyes. Why hadn't he told us? Why had he hidden this for 27 years? My father-in-law spoke my name. I asked through tears if he knew how much Minho had suffered, how wounded he'd been by never feeling accepted by his father. He said he knew. He knew it all. Then why? Why had he been so cold? My father-in-law was silent for a long time, then slowly spoke. Because he wasn't qualified. I asked what he meant. He said he wasn't Minho's real father, so he wasn't qualified to be his true father. That's why he had to be strict. That night, my father-in-law told me everything. In a consultation room by the hospital ward, just the two of us. It was 1992, he said. The year Minho was born. My father-in-law pulled an old black and white photograph from his pocket. In it was a young version of him with another couple and a baby. That man was Minho's biological father, he said, Park Chul-soo, his high school classmate, his closest friend. The man in the photo was smiling brightly, holding a baby in his arms. Chul-soo married a year after he did. His wife's name was Sujin, and she was wonderful. When Minho was born, Chul-soo was overjoyed. He came over every day with drinks, saying he was the happiest man in the world. My father-in-law's voice trembled. But the day before Minho turned 100 days old, May 15th, 1992, something happened. I held my breath listening. Chul-soo and his wife were in a car accident. A truck crossed the center line. Both died at the scene. I gasped. Minho was at home. Chul-soo's mother was watching him. Only the baby survived. My father-in-law wiped his eyes with his handkerchief. At the funeral, he held Minho. The baby was sleeping, unaware of anything. Chul-soo's mother was too old to raise a child. None of the relatives stepped forward. I asked what he did. He took him. Chul-soo had said something before he died. My father-in-law stroked the photograph. That joke became reality. My father-in-law stroked the photograph. Half joking, if anything ever happened to him, would Taeho look after Minho? He was an unmarried bachelor. But if he didn't, Minho would go to an orphanage. He couldn't let that happen. This was his friend's son. I said so he adopted him. Yes, he made Minho legally his son. Put him on the family register. Told people He was a late-life son. Everyone believed it. Even Minho never knew. Tears streamed down my face. But why had he been so cold? My father-in-law sighed. When Minho was 5, he had a kindergarten assignment to draw his father's face. When he showed the drawing, he'd drawn him smiling. I listened silently, but he'd never smiled at Minho. He was always stern. Seeing that picture hurt. The child wanted a father who smiled, but he couldn't be that father. I asked why not. Because he could never be like Chulsu. Chulsu was warm, always smiling, always telling his child he loved him. But he wasn't like that. He was stern, unable to express himself. My father-in-law's voice cracked. So he became stricter. He was afraid if he was warm, Minho would be disappointed. Afraid that comparing him to his real father would show how inadequate he was. I spoke his name, and he was afraid. If Minho ever learned the truth, would he resent him? Would he ask why someone who wasn't even his real father treated him that way? I took my father-in-law's hand. It was cold, so he kept his distance. It seemed better to remain a cold father. That way, when the truth came out, it would hurt less. But Minho suffered his whole life, I said. He knew, he said. It was all his fault. He'd failed as a father. My father-in-law bowed his head. Then I understood. How lonely this man must have been for 27 years. Loving his son, but unable to show it. Keeping distance while his heart broke, bearing it all alone. I told him he had to tell Minho. He said no. It would shock him. I said, what more shock could there be in his current state? Learning the truth might help him understand. My father-in-law hesitated. I said I'd be there with him. We'd tell him together. After a long moment, my father-in-law nodded. The next day, Minho was much more alert. Even while on dialysis, he was awake more often. I held his hand and carefully began. I told him we needed to talk about something. He asked what was wrong, why I looked so serious. I said that his father wanted to speak with him, that he'd be coming soon. Neil's expression hardened. He asked why his father was coming, if it was because of him. I said yes, and that there was something important his father needed to tell him. Shortly after, my father-in-law opened the hospital room door. Minho called out to him. My father-in-law returned the greeting. They looked at each other awkwardly. I brought a chair from my father-in-law. He sat silently for a long time, then pulled out that old photograph from his pocket. He asked Minho if he'd ever seen this photo. Minho took it. His face stiffened as he looked at it. He asked who this person was. Your father, my father-in-law said. Minho asked if it was a photo of him when he was younger. My father-in-law shook his head. No, he said. This is your real father. Park Chulsu. High school classmate. Minho looked between me and my father-in-law, confused. He asked what that meant. My father-in-law said he wasn't Minho's biological father. The room fell silent. Minho held the photo, frozen. I squeezed my husband's hand. Minho asked him to repeat that. My father-in-law explained. Minho was the son of Park Chulsu and Lee Sujin. Before his first birthday, both parents died in a car accident. So he took Minho in. Minho said it couldn't be true, his voice trembling. My father-in-law slowly told him everything. His friend's death, the orphan baby, the adoption decision, all those years. Throughout the story, Minho said nothing. He just looked at the photo again and again, tears flowing. Minho asked if that was why he treated him that way. My father-in-law said he was sorry. Minho asked why he never said anything. He wanted to protect Minho. He was afraid of hurting him. Minho cried out. He'd been hurt his whole life, living his entire life thinking his father didn't love him. I held my husband as he wept. My father-in-law bowed his head. He apologized, saying he wasn't qualified to be Minho's father. Minho repeated the word. Qualified? He asked how raising a child who wasn't his blood for 27 years meant he wasn't qualified. How bearing everything alone meant he wasn't qualified. Minho said he'd spent his whole life thinking his father didn't love him. But now he understood. His father loved him so much that it hurt him. Minho tried to get out of bed. I quickly tried to stop him, saying he wasn't well enough. He said he was fine. He stumbled to his feet and walked to his father. Then he knelt down. He called him father and apologized. Said he hadn't understood. Tears poured from my father-in-law's eyes. He spoke Minho's name. Minho said no, he was wrong. He was his father, his real father. Minho took his father's hands, saying, the man who raised him, fed him, taught him for 27 years was his father. Who else could be? My father-in-law couldn't hold back his tears. This man who'd hidden his emotions his whole life finally broke down. He kept saying he was sorry. Minho said, for the first time in his life, that he loved him. My father-in-law said he loved him too, my son. They held each other and cried. I cried too. The nurses outside were quietly crying as well. After 27 years, they had truly become father and son. But the touching moment passed quickly. We had to face reality. Minho still needed a kidney transplant. My father-in-law couldn't be a donor, and my blood type didn't match. We put him on the transplant waiting list, but the wait seemed endless. Minho's condition worsened. Even with dialysis, he was swelling and losing strength. In January 2020, the doctor looked grave. Any more delay would be dangerous. We needed to find a donor as soon as possible. I felt hopeless. My father-in-law came to the hospital every day to watch over Minho. One day, my father-in-law asked if I knew how to contact Chelsu's family. I asked if he meant the biological father's family, whether he hadn't stayed in touch. He said, never. He'd cut contact after taking Minho. I asked why. He felt guilty, like he'd taken a grandson away from Chelsu's mother. I sighed and said we should try to find them anyway. We searched through old addresses and found Chelsu's mother. Amazingly, she was still alive. An 88-year-old woman. She was in a nursing home. When my father-in-law and I visited, she didn't recognize him at first. But when he identified himself, she cried. She asked if it was really Teho, if Minho was well. My father-in-law said yes. but explained the situation. The grandmother cried for a long time, then said she was too old to help, that she was sorry. My father-in-law said it wasn't her fault. Then the caregiver asked if there were any relatives who could help. The grandmother said Cholsu was an only child. There weren't any relatives. Then suddenly remembered something. Cholsu's cousin, Park Minzak. I asked about this cousin. Yes, she said. 5 years younger than Cholsu, but she didn't know where he lived now. We tracked down Minzak Park. He was a middle-aged businessman in Busan. When he heard about Cholsu, he was shocked. Hen immediately agreed to be tested. And a miracle happened. Minsok's tissue was an almost perfect match for Minho. The doctor said it was incredibly rare for cousins to match so well. Surgery was scheduled for February 14th, 2020, Valentine's Day. The surgery was successful. Both Minho and Minsok recovered well. A month later, Minho was discharged. We held a small gathering at home. My father-in-law, Min Saok, Cholsu's grandmother, and us. For the first time, 3 generations were together. Minsok spoke. When Cholsu died, it was devastating. His cousin had treated him like a real brother. Not seeing his nephew had been a lifelong regret, and he never imagined they'd meet like this. Minho bowed his head and thanked his uncle for the kidney. Minsok said no. He was sorry he couldn't do more, that he should have found him sooner. Cholsu's grandmother took Minho's hand. She apologized for not raising him as a child. Minho said no. He'd had a good father and grew up well. Minho looked at his father. My father-in-law was looking out the window, but I saw it. He was smiling, the brightest smile I'd ever seen from him. That night, after everyone left, just the 3 of us remained. Minho told his father they should live together. My father-in-law looked surprised. Minho said the 3 of us should live together. He wanted to be a real family now. My father-in-law was silent for a moment, then nodded. He agreed. We moved to a larger apartment, 3 bedrooms. My father-in-law took the smallest room, but now he came out to the living room often. He watched TV with us, ate meals with us. One evening, while I was washing dishes, I heard Minho and his father talking. Minho said he'd been offered a team leader position at work. My father-in-law said that was good. Minho asked if that was all. In the past, he would have asked if that was the best he could do. My father-in-law laughed. Really laughed. He said those days were over. Minho was already doing well enough. He was proud of him. I cried while washing dishes. Happy tears. In 2021, Minho told me we should have a child. I asked if he meant it. He said yes. He wanted to see his father become a grandfather, a real grandfather. I held my husband and cried. In spring 2022, our daughter was born. My father-in-law held his granddaughter and wept. He no longer hid his emotions. His first grandchild, he said. Our beautiful grandchild. Minho asked if his father would name her. My father-in-law asked if he really wanted him to. Minho said yes. Grandfather should choose the name. My father-in-law thought for a long time then said Uni, grace, a grace from heaven. We all cried, 053, oh. Now I'm 41 years old. Our daughter Uni is 3 and my father-in-law is 73. Every morning, my father-in-law takes Uni to daycare. Watching him walk away, holding his granddaughter's hand, fills my heart. For 27 years, he hid his love. Now he expresses it freely. Yesterday, Yunia asked him if he was Daddy's real daddy. My father-in-law paused, then picked her up and said yes, grandfather is real grandfather. Eunhye asked why he doesn't look like Daddy. My father-in-law said looking alike isn't just about faces. Hearts can look alike too. Eunhye asked if their hearts looked alike. Yes, he said, grandfather and Daddy are family in their hearts. Eunhye laughed and asked if she looked like grandfather in her heart too. Of course, he said. Eunhye's heart is just like grandfather's. I wiped away tears watching them. What is family? Is it blood? DNA? No. Family is being there together. Being there when someone hurts, laughing together in joy, being a support in hard times. My father-in-law did that for 27 years. He kept his distance because they weren't blood. But that distance was filled with love. He just couldn't express it. Now he expresses everything. Every morning he says, I love you. He hugs. He smiles. Mino no longer thinks his father doesn't love him. Every day he says, thank you, that he's grateful. I treat my father-in-law like my own father. No, I respect him even more than that. Last night, as we ate dinner together, my father-in-law spoke. He asked if we knew what the best thing he'd ever done was. Minho asked what. My father-in-law said taking Minho in. That was the best thing he'd ever done. Minho's eyes welled up. He said the same thing. His greatest luck in life was being his father's son. My father-in-law said he took him in. Minho said even so, he was still his son. My father-in-law smiled. Yes, he said. You're my son, forever. We laughed together. Outside, snow was falling. White snow covering the windows. It felt like a new beginning. The secret, hidden for 27 years, had become the bond that held us together even stronger. We learned that there's a love deeper than blood. That's what real family means.